Hello, this is your explanation for the elements and principles of design posters, and this is a little project. What you're going to be doing is demonstrate the use of an element and or principle of design by creating a low relief sculpture that visually demonstrates that word. You're demonstrating the meaning of that word. You're using a variety of materials to create a low relief sculpture, and you'll be explaining how the artwork in the posters uses that element and or principle of design. So, what is a traditional sculpture? A traditional sculpture is three-dimensional. It has form. We can see all around the sculpture. So, these two examples here, we could theoretically look all around the sculpture and we would see something. Now, what is a relief sculpture? This is a sculpture that's meant to be seen from only one side, and it's usually attached to a wall or carved into the wall, and it's meant to be viewed from the front. So these are examples here of relief sculptures. They're attached to a wall, so we cannot see behind it. We can only see the front of the sculpture and maybe a little bit of the sides because they are pretty 3D here. They have a lot of form. This is actually the earliest form of sculpture because when you think about it, it's difficult to carve a completely 3D object. There are two types of relief sculptures. There is low relief and high relief. So we have an example here of a relief sculpture. Parts of it are 3D, but it's mostly pushed into the wall. While this is a sculpture in the round, this is a much more, as I would say, traditional sculpture. Now, we actually recognize this sculpture, which is the president's faces on Mount Rushmore. This is an example of relief sculpture because they're actually attached to the rock in, that we can see. They're 3D though. And again, these are more examples of relief sculptures. They are attached to a wall, but they have some 3D-ness. There's some form to it. Now, this is a much more low relief sculpture here. What is a low relief sculpture? This is where part of the sculpture is raised from the surface, but it does not stand out as much. And we can easily find low relief sculptures on our coins because when you look at a coin, you can see, some 3D-ness to it, but it's mostly flat. So the difference between low relief and high relief sculpture is the high relief sculpture, it stands out from the surface to a greater degree, while a low relief sculpture, parts of the design are much closer to the surface. Though to be honest, this sometimes can be hard to recognize because there's a fine line between when does it become high relief and when does it become low relief. So this is a high relief sculpture because the head and the body stands out greatly from the surface behind the sculpture. This is a low relief sculpture. This is actually made out of cardboard. And so we can see that there's not a lot of spacing between these different forms. But no matter the material that's being used to create a relief sculpture, you can tell that there is layers to it. There can be complexity as well. So the guidelines for your poster, you're going to focus on one principle of design. Why the principle of design? Because you have to use the elements to create that principle of design. You'll be using a variety of materials to create a low relief sculpture on mat board. This will be the surface. Your poster will require the word and an explanation of how your low relief sculpture visually represents that principle of design. Consider the following about each of the principles of design. Now this is a low relief sculpture. We're going to see a variety of low relief sculptures here, and they all use different principles of design. And again, we can talk about this using the elements of design. So your poster must use at least 4 to 5 different materials. You're going to have a wide variety of materials that you get to use, and you'll be using hot glue to attach the materials to the mat board. Here's a few suggestions to help you as you start planning and creating your poster. Look at the materials that are available. See what I have placed out for you. Yes, you can alter the materials. You can cut them up. You can build outward and upward because, again, it's like a flat sculpture stuck to the mat board. And overlapping is key. You will probably need to overlap the materials. A few more suggestions include you might want to arrange the materials before you glue them on. Figure out how you want those materials to work on the mat board before you start gluing them. Please use hot glue sparingly. The hot glue should not be part of the sculpture, and please no large globs of glue. This will affect the craftsmanship of the grade for your poster. Use most of the space available on the mat board. Do not make a tiny little sculpture and then we have all this empty space around it. Leave space for the word though. We need to know what word, what principle is being used in your poster. And be creative with the materials. You have a lot of ways to create your principles of design. If you're ready to begin, please ask Miss J for the mat board and take a look at the materials.